Now I'm going to show you how to make our blueberry crumble. This is a wonderful recipe to have in your repertoire. Not only is it very, very easy, it is also very versatile. We are actually using fresh fruit, but you can easily use frozen fruit. They work just as well. And we can use any fruit of any kind during any season. It works for apples, it works for strawberries, it works for a combination of different fruits. So we're going to start with our blueberries. We're happy to be using fresh because they're really, really at the peak of season, but frozen work very, very well. And before we sweeten these up, we're going to taste them. You don't want to add too much sugar if the berries themselves are already very sweet. And these are outstanding. So I'm going to add a little bit of sugar. I'm not going to add the full amount that's in the recipe. Always taste your fruit, even if it's frozen. It'll warm up quickly. But taste them. Make sure you're not making this dessert too sweet. I'm going to add a pinch of salt to balance some of that sweetness and to bring out some of those wonderful flavors in the blueberries. And now I'm going to add some cornstarch. Cornstarch is going to bind with all of the juices that come out of the fruit while it's baking. It's going to make that goo that we love in pie fillings. So I'm going to pour that into a little sieve or strainer, just because cornstarch can get lumpy very, very quickly. And I just like to get all the lumps out before I start mixing it together. If you are using frozen fruit, it is always a good idea to leave the fruit frozen. As fruit thaws that's been frozen, it starts to sweat and give off condensation. That will instantly make the cornstarch start to bind up and get lumpy. So just leave it frozen. It will work much, much better. So I'm going to toss this all around, make sure my berries are all nice and well coated. And they look great. And now, when you're looking for a baking dish, we want something that is oven safe, obviously, and nice and deep, because the juices can bubble up very easily. I like to do them sometimes in little individual portions, because it's easier and we don't like to share. But I'm gonna pour my fruit into my baking dish. You can really make sure you can pile them up, because they will kind of shrink as they cook. Make sure all that sugar and cornstarch are kind of evenly distributed. And now we're going to work on our crumble. Now for our streusel topping. This is a wonderful thing to make in large quantities, because you can keep the extra and keep it in the freezer. Cut up an apple, put it into one of those small dishes, and just top it with a little bit of this streusel topping, throw it in the oven, and you have an instant dessert. It's fantastic. So in my bowl, I have some flour and two different kinds of sugar. We're using equal parts of granulated sugar and brown sugar. Brown sugar has that wonderful kind of rich molassesy flavor. Then we're gonna add some cinnamon. Makes the whole house smell wonderful and really pairs well with most fruits. And again, like with our berries, some salt. I'm going to kind of mix that together with my pastry cutter. This is a wonderful thing to have. Helps you make pie crusts and crumbles. And we're just going to kind of mix all of those dry ingredients together in our bowl. And then we're going to add our butter. So this is 2 sticks of butter that I've cut up into cubes. As you can see, they're little tiny pieces. That just helps us in this process, makes the whole process go a lot quicker. If you don't have one of these pastry cutters, you can just use a couple of forks or some knives to really kind of cut the butter into tiny, tiny little pieces. So we're going to get all of our butter into our dry ingredients. And then we're just going to keep working our butter into those dry ingredients until they're really kind of one solid mixture or one homogeneous mixture, that when we take a handful of it, that it holds together in our hands when we squeeze it. It takes a little bit of time, but it is well worth it. So I'm going to keep going until all of my butter is incorporated. All right, I'm almost there. As you can see, when I take a handful of the mixture, it kind of clumps together and holds together and it's not super crumbly. That's what we're looking for. Because when we put this over top of our fruit, we're actually going to squeeze it together and make large crumbles. That's what gives that kind of quintessential crumble look. Almost there. As you can see, I can hold it together, and it really holds together in a nice clump. And there's no real large patches of dry ingredients that didn't get mixed in, which is what you're looking for. Now we're gonna add some oats. These are gonna give a really wonderful crunch to our crumble mixture. I don't add them in the beginning just because I don't want to chop them up into kind of oat flour or oat dust. If you didn't want to use oats, you could use any sort of nut. Nuts go very well with fruit. Just gives it that nice crunch. All right, so now I have my fruit, and I'm gonna take large sections of this and kind of crumble it over the top of our fruit. We're not trying to cover the fruit completely. We actually want to see a little bit of that blueberry color coming through our crumble. But you do want to put enough on there so that when it bakes and cooks down, you still have a nice kind of thick topping. So there's my blueberry crumble all covered and ready to go into the oven. We're gonna bake it at 375 degrees until it's bubbly. I would say about 20 to 25 minutes. But let's say you're cooking roasted potatoes and you only have one oven and you're cooking them at 400 degrees. Crumbles are very, very resilient. You could put the crumble at 400 degrees. It will be just fine. Just keep an eye on it, and when you see it bubbling around the edges and the top looks nice and golden brown, it's ready to go. Serve with a scoop of cold vanilla ice cream. So here is our blueberry crumble, fresh from the oven. We baked it for about 15 minutes at 375 degrees. The top is golden brown and the edges are just bubbling, and it smells fantastic. So you want to let it cool just slightly. Remember, that's molten sugar in there. And then we're going to top it with some delicious vanilla ice cream.